It was meant to be the homecoming that finally healed a broken family. A father and son, an ocean apart for so long, edging cautiously back toward one another. A grandfather, aging and unwell, on the brink of finally meeting the grandchildren he barely knows. For weeks, the hope had been building, quietly, fragile but real. And then, in the space of a single, dramatic day, just hours before the plane was due to land, it all began to unravel. A door that had been gently opened was suddenly, painfully, pulled shut. And a homecoming that was supposed to mend everything instead descended into confusion, disappointment, and heartache. Today, I want to walk you through the extraordinary 24 hours that threw Prince Harry's return to Britain into chaos. Because it is a genuine royal drama, full of suspense and misunderstanding and wounded feelings on every side. And at the very heart of it, as always, is a family simply struggling to find its way back together. Let me set the scene for you because the stakes here could hardly have been higher. This was never meant to be one of Harry's usual quick, quiet trips to Britain. For years, he had slipped in and out of the country alone, in and out, barely pausing. But this time was going to be different. This time, it was reported, he intended to bring his wife and his 2 young children, Archie and Lilibet, with him. And that detail changed everything. Because it opened up the tantalizing possibility of a reunion that the whole nation had been longing to see. King Charles, now 77 and bravely continuing his duties while undergoing cancer treatment, has not seen his youngest grandchildren in 4 long years. 4 years. Little Lilibet has met her grandfather only once, as a baby. So the idea that this trip might finally bring them together, that an old and unwell king might at last get to hold his grandchildren again, gave this visit an emotional weight that no ordinary engagement could ever carry. This was, potentially, a landmark moment, a homecoming that could begin to heal years of pain. The hopes riding on it were enormous. And for a while, it seemed those hopes might actually be realized, because behind the scenes, a genuinely warm gesture had been made. It emerged that King Charles had personally offered his son a place to stay at a royal residence during the visit. Now, understand why this mattered so much. Harry's entire hesitation about coming to Britain has centered on one thing: security. Ever since he and Meghan stepped back from royal duties, their automatic police protection in the UK was removed, and Harry has fought a long, anguished battle over it, terrified for the safety of his family on British soil. But staying at a royal residence would solve that problem at a stroke, because such a place comes with its own protection, guarded around the clock. So the king's offer was more than just a room. It was a bridge. A quiet, fatherly way of saying, "Come, bring the children, you will be safe here." For a brief, hopeful moment, it looked as though love might just have found a way around the obstacles. The pieces seemed to be falling into place. But this is where our story takes its first dramatic turn, because the offer, it seems, was not accepted cleanly or quickly. According to palace sources, Harry initially declined the invitation. Then, apparently changing his mind, he tried to accept it, but only at the last moment over the weekend, after a crucial deadline had already passed. And by then, the palace said, it was simply too late. The staffing, the preparations, the arrangements needed to host him, they said, could no longer be put in place in time. And so, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the offer was withdrawn. The door, so briefly open, swung shut. Imagine the whiplash of that. One moment, a family reunion seems possible. The next, it has evaporated over questions of deadlines and logistics. It was the beginning of a genuinely chaotic sequence of events that would leave almost everyone confused and upset. And then it got messier still. Because on the very morning Harry was due to travel, his team told the media that he would, in fact, be staying at Buckingham Palace after all. The news flashed around the world. But within minutes, the palace itself contradicted it, stating firmly that no, this was no longer happening, that the offer had lapsed. Picture the confusion of that moment. Two versions of the truth colliding in public in real time, just hours before a plane was due to land. And in response, Harry's side issued what was described as an extraordinary statement, expressing deep disappointment, and accusing the palace of pulling the offer away at the very last moment. His team explained that Harry had been scrambling all week to sort out alternative security arrangements after learning he would not receive the government protection he had hoped for, and that once he had done so, he had accepted the accommodation in good faith, only to have it snatched back. From Harry's perspective, he had been left out in the cold, embarrassed and hurt, at the worst possible time. And to truly understand Harry's distress, you have to remember where his fear comes from, because it is not a small or a cynical thing. This is a man who, as a boy of 12, lost his mother in a car crash as she was pursued through the streets. That horror has shaped every instinct he has as a husband and a father. When Harry thinks about bringing his wife and his small children to Britain without what he considers proper protection, he is not calculating angles or playing games. He is a father haunted by the worst thing that ever happened to him, terrified of history repeating itself with the people he loves most. Britain, for Harry, is a place of impossible contradictions. It is home, and it is also the place where his mother died. It holds his deepest roots and his deepest wound in the very same ground. So when the security fell through and then the accommodation collapsed on top of it, his reaction was not merely disappointment over a room. It was the panic of a man who felt he could no longer keep his family safe in the one place that frightens him most. Whether or not his fears match the actual level of risk, and reasonable people may disagree on that, the fear itself is achingly real, and it springs from genuine love and genuine trauma. And that is why this all cuts so deep for him. Now, in fairness, and this is important, there is another side to this, and the palace's position deserves to be understood too, because there was more going on beneath the surface than just a missed deadline. Hanging over this entire visit was another dramatic event, a major court ruling. Harry has been locked in a long-running legal battle against the publishers of a British newspaper, and in an extraordinary coincidence of timing, the verdict in that case was due to be handed down during his very visit. And this created a genuine dilemma for the palace. Because if Harry were staying at Buckingham Palace, the very seat of the monarchy, on the day he might be delivering statements about a court victory against the British press, the optics would be almost impossible. It could drag the king, who must remain scrupulously neutral and above such disputes, into a legal and political storm he has every reason to avoid. The monarchy has always tried to keep a careful, respectful distance from the free press and the courts. So palace sources suggested that, with this ruling looming, it had been deemed genuinely inappropriate for Harry to be lodged in a royal residence at that precise moment. Seen that way, the withdrawal of the offer was not simply coldness or cruelty. It was a monarch trying to protect the delicate constitutional position of the crown itself. There were, in other words, real and understandable reasons on both sides, and that is exactly what makes this such a genuine and painful tangle. To understand the palace's caution, you have to understand just how seriously the monarchy guards its neutrality. For centuries, the crown has survived precisely by staying above the fray, never taking sides in politics, never wading into the business of the courts, never appearing to favor one party over another. It is one of the golden rules of the modern monarchy, and King Charles, a careful and constitutionally minded man, understands it better than anyone. Now imagine the scene that could have unfolded. A landmark court verdict handed down against a major newspaper, and the man at the center of it, victorious or defeated, standing on the steps of Buckingham Palace itself, the very heart of the institution, to have his say. It would have looked to all the world as though the monarchy itself was taking sides in Harry's private war with the press, and that is a line the crown simply cannot cross. There was also the wider backdrop to consider. The royal family has been working hard in these recent times to project stability and propriety, to avoid any hint of scandal or special treatment for any one member. So the idea of Harry, who is no longer a working royal, being housed in a royal palace at such a sensitive moment, was fraught with difficulty. When you lay all of this out, you begin to see that the palace was not simply being heartless. It was navigating a genuinely treacherous constitutional minefield, trying to protect something far larger and older than any single family quarrel. And yet, from Harry's side of the fence, none of that constitutional reasoning could ease the simple, human sting of feeling shut out by his own family. Both things were true at once, and therein lies the tragedy. So where did all of this leave the thing that mattered most, the reunion between a grandfather and his grandchildren? And here, sadly, is the most heartbreaking consequence of all this chaos. Because as the accommodation collapsed and the security worries deepened, the plan for Meghan and the children to travel to London fell apart. It became clear that the two little ones would not, after all, be coming to the capital, over the very concerns for their safety that had haunted the trip from the beginning. The grandchildren the king so longed to see would not be there. 4 years of waiting, a fragile hope raised, and then, once again, dashed amid the confusion. You can only imagine the quiet heartbreak of that, for a grandfather who may have allowed himself, just for a moment, to believe that this time would be different. And spare a thought, too, for the two little ones at the very center of this storm, who know nothing of any of it. To Archie, who is 7 now, and Lilibet, who is 5, there are no court cases, no security committees, no palace deadlines. There is only their sunny life in California, their toys, their bedtime stories, the warm, ordinary world of childhood. They did not create this situation, and they cannot understand it. All they know is the love of their parents. Somewhere across the sea is a grandfather, a king no less, who thinks of them and longs to know them, and they are far too young to grasp any of the reasons why the distance between them remains. There is something especially tender and especially sad about that innocence. Because while the adults argue over rooms and rulings and protection, it is these two children who quietly lose the most. Another year passing without the chance to build memories with a grandfather who may not have unlimited years left to make them. Whatever the rights and wrongs of the grown-up disputes, that is the quiet cost that no one can quite justify. And it is the reason so many people, watching all this unfold, simply wish the adults could find a way to set aside their pride, for the sake of two little ones who deserve to be loved by all the family they have. And yet, even in all this mess, the door has not closed completely, and a flicker of hope stubbornly remains. Because Harry still came. He still made the journey home to carry out his genuine and worthy work, marking the countdown to next year's Invictus Games, the extraordinary event for wounded veterans that remains one of the finest things he has ever built. And it was reported that while the children would not come to London, they might yet join their father for parts of the trip elsewhere in the country, away from the capital. The possibility of some kind of contact, some small step forward, was not entirely gone. And whenever these two men, father and son, are in the same country, breathing the same air, there is always the faint, persistent hope that a quiet moment together might yet be found. Hope in this family has proven remarkably hard to kill. It is worth pausing on just how dizzying that single day truly was, because it captures this whole saga in miniature. In the space of a few short hours, the world was told Harry would be staying at the palace, then told he would not. His team said one thing, the palace said another. A reunion was on, then off. Accommodation was offered, accepted, and withdrawn. Statements flew back and forth, each one contradicting the last. For anyone watching, it was almost impossible to keep up. A whirlwind of claim and counterclaim that left everyone dizzy and no one satisfied. And that, in a way, is the perfect and painful symbol of where this family finds itself, so tangled in misunderstanding and mistrust that even a simple offer of a place to stay can spiral, within a day, into a full-blown crisis. When things have broken down this badly, even good intentions seem to turn to chaos the moment they touch the air. And that is perhaps the saddest sign of all of just how much healing this family still has ahead of it. But let me step back now, because beneath all the drama of deadlines and statements and court cases, there is a deeper and more human story here, and it is the one that truly matters. Strip all the chaos away, and what you are left with is achingly simple. You have a father and a son who have hurt each other, and who are both, in their clumsy and complicated ways, still circling back toward one another, unable to fully let go. You have a king trying to be a good grandfather while also protecting an ancient institution, caught between his heart and his crown. You have a son, scarred by the loss of his own mother, gripped by a very real fear for his family's safety, perhaps handling it imperfectly, but from a place of genuine love. And you have two innocent children in the middle of it all, who understand none of it, and who simply deserve to know their grandfather. There are no cartoon villains in this story, however much the headlines might want them. There are only flawed, frightened, loving human beings, caught in a web of hurt and pride and fear that none of them seems able to fully escape. And perhaps that is the quiet truth at the center of this whole dramatic saga, because this was never really a story about accommodation or deadlines or court cases at all. Those were just the surface. Underneath, this is a story about how desperately hard it is to rebuild a broken bond once trust has been damaged. About how, when a family has been wounded, even the simplest gesture, an offer of a room, a plan for a visit, can collapse under the weight of old suspicions and fresh misunderstandings. So many families know a smaller version of this, the reunion that keeps almost happening but never quite does, the reconciliation forever just out of reach, tripped up by pride and timing and fear. And watching this royal family struggle with it, so publicly and so painfully, we are really watching something universal. The heartbreaking difficulty of finding your way back to the people you have drifted from. Will this family heal? After these chaotic 24 hours, it is honestly impossible to say. The visit has been thrown into turmoil. The children did not come to London. The reunion the king longed for may once again have to wait. But Harry came home. The two men remain, by all accounts, in contact. And somewhere beneath all the confusion and the wounded pride, the oldest force in the world is still quietly at work. The pull of a father toward his son, of a grandfather toward his grandchildren, of a family that, for all its pain, cannot quite stop reaching for one another. This particular homecoming may have ended in heartache. But as long as they keep trying, as long as that stubborn thread of love refuses to break, then the story is not over. And perhaps, one day, on some quieter visit with less drama and more grace, the reunion this family so desperately needs will finally, gently, come to pass. Until then, we can only watch and hope, and wish them the peace that has so long eluded them. Thank you so much for watching. If this dramatic and very human story moved you, please do share your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe King Charles and Harry will find their way back to one another? And do you think in the end this family will finally heal? Until next time, take good care of yourselves.